This is the new MG5 and it's basically a very affordable small sedan. It kind of looks like a Mercedes-Benz C-Class in my opinion, or even a bit of Hyundai in the front end there, particularly around the headlights. Either way, it does look quite attractive. I'm not sure about this bright yellow or this mustard yellow color, but you know, at least if you want to stand out, there's the option there to do that. It kind of reminds me of some sort of Chinese taxi being in yellow like that. But yeah, it does look quite good in my opinion. I like this little chrome strip along the window there. And then around at the back, yeah, you've got a bit of Genesis G70 going on, a bit of C-Class going on there with the fake exhaust pipes down the bottom. Overall, I think it does look pretty attractive, and I think that's what these emerging brands, and they are emerging, they've only been around for a short time compared with the big ones like Toyota, Mitsubishi and all that. They've been around for over 50 years, whereas MG in Australia has only been here for, you know, 10 or not even 10 years really. So it is an emerging brand, and they are developing, and I have no doubt in my mind that they will be up there with the best of them in not too long, because they're already starting to show signs of that. They've got the skills to produce the technology. They're already making the technology over in China, even for a lot of the other sort of well-known brands. So they know how to do that. The calibration is not quite there in my opinion for some of the technologies, but that'll all come soon. And then the design, they're obviously getting on top of that as well. So there's definitely some good traits going on here, especially for the money. So this starts from $24,990 drive away. That's an insane price for this market segment and for this day and age, because most vehicles, you know, you can't get much change out of $30,000 these days. I guess the main question is, should you buy one? Well, there are some question marks in terms of safety. ANCAP hasn't actually tested the MG5 at the time of the recording of this video, but as far as I know, it's not capable of reaching 5 stars because it doesn't come with some of those technologies. There are 2 variants on sale, including the Vibe and the Essence. This is the Vibe, the base model. It doesn't come with any of the lane keep assist or blind spot assist systems that are required as a benchmark for 5-star safety. So it automatically can't achieve 5 stars in this specification. I'm not sure about the Essence. I haven't had a good look at that one. But yeah, as it is, this is not a 5-star ANCAP safety vehicle. And we'll check out the interior. It is pretty good. I don't mind this interior. I've just noticed the doors are a bit tinny, they're a bit sort of hollow, and it doesn't have the best cabin insulation in my opinion. We'll go for a drive in a minute and I'll show you a bit more. Something's beeping at me constantly. Take your key. I've got the key. What do you want me to do with the key? Take it. Okay. Anyway, we'll try and continue on while that beeps at me. Okay, finally. Yeah, the interior in here is quite nice. I'm not sure if you can sort of make it out from the camera view there, but it's actually a nice design. It's got a bit of sculpting going on there. All of this is pretty hard plastic, but again, for that price, you have to look back at that and think, well, what do you expect? I like the way there are various textures and tones and stuff around the place. Even across here, you've got this sort of, I don't know what you call that, honeycomb style, I guess. And then this metallic section across the dash there. It's divided up and it kind of makes it look a bit more three-dimensional rather than just monotone. And even the door trim there has got some red stitching. The driving position is quite good as well. I can get into a reasonably comfortable position, but like with a lot of Chinese vehicles, the steering wheel only goes up and down. You can't pull it forward. I don't know what it is with the Chinese vehicle brands that they just don't want to give you that reach adjustment. It just means you have to pull the seat in a bit more than you might otherwise have in a different model or a different vehicle. But in this car, I can get a good driving position anyway, even with the steering wheel kind of forward. It kind of does stick out a little bit. It's not too bad. And then once you start it up, you've got this touchscreen system here. It's quite a nice system, I think. I like the graphics, I like the layout. It is a little bit basic, just in terms of you've got the main menu here, and you've got just a couple of apps there. But you can hit the climate button there and it will take you straight to it. But some of the other apps, you've got to go into the side buttons here, and that's still handy to have, so you can just jump straight to it. Even the vehicle settings there, You can go in and change stability control and even the steering setting. It doesn't really do anything, it just makes the steering lighter or heavier basically. But it is a pretty big screen as well, and it's good to have that as a standard feature in a base model vehicle. Electronic handbrake, conventional gear stick, and you've even got an S mode for the CVT transmission. In the back seat here, so remembering this is a small vehicle, it is very spacious. Look at that leg room I've got. I've got my front seat in the sort of normal position for me. I'm not extremely tall, but even still, you've got plenty of clearance there, even if that seat were to come back a little bit. You've actually got climate vents in the back, or a climate vent, and then a USB port down the bottom there, which is definitely very impressive for this vehicle class and for this price range. More of that multi-tone or multi-textured trim for the doors, and even a little red section there for the seat, which is a nice touch. And yeah, headroom is definitely very good. My head's nowhere near that. You probably just have to be careful as you're exiting and entering the vehicle that you might hit your head there. You've got map pockets in the back there. Yeah, it's all quite nice. The only thing I did notice actually is, yeah, the cabin acoustics, not sure if you can hear that, but there's a definite vibration or a hum sort of goes when you close the door. It's, yeah, I wouldn't expect that in a new vehicle. Maybe an old car, but not a new vehicle, because all this trim and all this stuff that sticks out, that absorbs a lot of the sound. So for it to still echo and things in here, it shouldn't really be like that. I also noticed there is a bit of echoing going on when you're talking as well. I actually do my voiceover recordings inside the vehicle, whatever vehicle I've got for that week. I'll go out and do the voiceover recording sitting in the back usually, so you can have the seat and everything and the sound bouncing off everything. But in this, I noticed last night, it was definitely echo. You probably can't hear it on camera, but there's a definite sort of acoustic ring there. And then right up the back here, it's a decent boot. For this vehicle size or this vehicle class, that's a pretty good boot. You can't fold down the rear seats like you can in some European models. You can actually fold down that whole seat, but that looks like a single bench seat across there. But even still, it does go quite deep. And then you've got a space saver spare wheel under the floor. All right, let's go for a drive now and see what it's like. I have already driven it a bit, and I can tell you that the handling is pretty good for this class, and again for that price. It holds on quite well. The suspension absorbs, you know, pretty ordinary country roads we have here in Australia. It's not until you push it near its limit that you'll feel that it's a little bit bouncy. The suspension can't resolve itself quickly enough to catch the next bump if you happen to go around a corner that's got multiple bumps. And these tyres, they are pretty good. They're Kumo tyres, so they're not some cheap brand tyre, but they do sort of start to squeal pretty early on. If you're coming to a corner that's a bit too quickly, it'll start to slide a little bit, and actually the stability control is a little bit delayed. I actually came around this corner. I was testing it, so I'm pushing it more than, you know, the average driver, but I sort of tipped it in and the back end actually started to come out, which is nice, but probably not what you want from a standard car like this. And any of the rivals that I've driven, I don't remember them doing that on the same corner. Out on the road, on a country road like this, you can hear the road roar coming into the cabin a fair bit actually. It doesn't have the best cabin insulation in my opinion, but for this sort of price range, you know, what are you expecting? The suspension is pretty good. It does absorb these bumps quite well. It's not until you push it pretty hard that, you know, it starts to become a bit unsettled. But again, it comes back to that price. What are you expecting for this price, and comparing it against other vehicles of this price range too, which there are not many, sorry. I'll just slow down and give it the full beans for you. So we're going down a hill, but yeah, it does scream a fair bit, but that's partly due to the CVT automatic characteristics in general. So these types of gearboxes, I'm not a fan of them. They seem like a quick fix to reduce emissions and fuel consumption, but they take all the, you know, they do nothing for the driver. So they're there purely for that purpose. And you know, you can look at the German rivals or the German car makers to see what they're doing, or even the Italian car makers. You know, they're known for producing vehicles that are a bit more fun to drive. None of those have CVT gearboxes. So even if these do reduce fuel consumption and emissions by some margin, it can't be that big, because otherwise all manufacturers would apply them without even thinking about it. And for a general car like this though, look, I get it, you don't care, you just want a gearbox that works, you don't really care if it's not changing gears per se, but yeah, it just means the engine is screaming a bit more than it otherwise would with a 6-speed automatic or an 8-speed automatic. Going for the Essence model with the turbo engine, I've heard the dual clutch transmission in that is quite delayed, so you do have to deal with, you know, that slack when you're taking off as the clutches engage, whereas in this it just has a normal torque converter automatic, just with the CVT behind it, sorry. So you don't have to worry about any of that sort of stuff. You just get in, put it in D and drive, and you don't have to compensate for anything. So in that sense, this is, or could be, a bit more refined than the 1.5 turbo Essence model. Across my trip today, which has only been 70 kilometers, I've averaged 9.8 liters per 100 kilometers, but I did just do the performance testing, so you can't really look at that as a real world figure. And if we go to this longer term trip information, over 830 kilometers, it's using 10.4, which is not the best for a small little car like this. But I don't know what sort of driving was done with for that 832 kilometers. I mean, 70 of it was mine, or maybe a bit more. I forgot to reset this trip computer when I picked it up. Interestingly, the turbo model is rated at 6.4 liters per 100, whereas this is rated at 6.6. It's higher. So there is a potential to experience lower fuel consumption in the real world as well in the turbo model. And that's pretty normal. A turbocharged engine is usually more efficient in that it doesn't have to work as hard to produce the same or more torque and power. Obviously, being a turbocharged engine though, it is a bit more complex, and with the dual clutch transmission, it's even more complex. So you do have to factor in sort of long-term reliability if that matters to you, if you are planning on keeping the vehicle for a long time. All right, so we'll switch over to the performance test now and see what it goes like. I've just been to the gym to have a good long hard think about my conclusion of the MG5, and while I was on the elliptical machine rowing away or swinging away, it made me think of something that Jeremy Clarkson once said about a vehicle. Not this vehicle, but he said it's some car. And I think that's my opinion of this. It's like if you went to a department store and could ask for 4 meters of vehicle, they could roll it out, cut it off, there you go. That's kind of what you'd get. You can take that as a good thing or a bad thing, but that's essentially what it is. It is some car. It doesn't come with any frills, but it does do everything a car should do, such as steer well, goes okay. Well, performance is probably a bit lacking, but if that's not important to you, then you're not going to be concerned about that. And the fuel economy is probably not the best for this size engine. Areas that I do think need attention though are refinements. So that just the cabin insulation, the cabin quality. We've got those doors that really rattle around, and it's a bit echoey inside. Again, you know, is that what you pay for? You know, should you expect something like that? I don't know. I think other vehicles in this specific class are more refined, particularly, you know, Hyundai i30, Kia Cerato, Toyota Corolla. They're all much more refined than this, but they are more expensive. Would I buy one? That's probably a silly question. I'd probably buy an old BMW or something like that, pour my money into it every other weekend. It could appreciate in value in time, but you know, try telling my wife that. Whereas this won't ever appreciate in value, I don't think, unless it gets some sort of weird cult following in the future and you just keep it for 100 years, it might actually go up in value, I suppose. But yeah, I wouldn't buy one of these, but even if I was in the market for one of these style of vehicles, I think the i30 sedan, or the Elantra, as you might know overseas if you're watching from overseas, is the best all-round sedan in this sort of small car class. It does everything, handles really well, it comes with good technology. It's a sound vehicle, whereas this is definitely at the budget end of the spectrum, and it is. It's $24,990, so you can't expect anything more really. Another area to consider is safety. As I said, this vehicle hasn't been tested by ANCAP at the time of this video, and I know this vehicle, this particular model, will not pass 5-star standards because it's missing some of those automatic checklist technologies. But as we saw with the Tank 300 video, that is awarded 5 stars, yet the rear wheels come off the ground. I think that's an important issue. As John Cadogan pointed out in his video, checking over mine as well, that it's not acceptable for the rear wheels to be coming off the ground during hard braking, an emergency. And that's where you want the best of what the car can do. In an emergency, the car needs to perform at its best. Where it's, you know, comfort and refinement even, or technology, you know, the multimedia system, that's all much lower down in the priorities, in my opinion anyway. But this seems to perform well. It handles okay. The braking distance is a bit concerning in my opinion when other vehicles of this class, you know, they'll stop on the same piece of tarmac in about 39 meters or 38 meters. By the way, there's no point in comparing my times with someone else's times, like Car Expert or anything like that. They're on a different road. They're using different equipment. The best thing to do is compare the same standards. So it's like ANCAP. You can compare the other vehicles that ANCAP has tested because they're tested in exactly the same way. So my tests might be different to Paul Marrick's on Car Expert. He uses a different section of road, he uses a different tarmac. So you can't compare those times. But for the vehicles that I have tested in this class, the stopping distance is pretty poor. This stopping distance is pretty poor. The other ones have achieved shorter distances, again on the same piece of tarmac with the same Vbox and me behind the wheel. So you can compare those distances. I have no doubt in my mind that MG will be a big player in the near future. It already is. It's getting the design, very close to getting the design there. The technology is already there. China already makes lots of good technologies for other companies as well. So there's no shortage of that. Let me know what you think though. Are you considering buying one? Or if you have some concerns or corrections in my video, please let me know in the comments and I'll try and answer as quick as I can. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I stink.